welcome back to the Talking Wolves podcast for a new episode. It's our first episode, I believe, since the closure of the transfer window. Our first episode since the last Premier League game, which unfortunately was a defeat against Everton. But we'll get into all of that. We've had some great questions. We'll review the transfer window as well. But alongside me today, as always, two fantastic guests. Once again, we've got Jordan Russell and returning Joe Parker from Concept Scouting. Joe, it's good to have you back. Jord, firstly, how are you? How you been keeping?
Yeah, all good, thank you, mate. All good. A little sore from the weekend. Obviously, we're at the charity football game.
I think you needed to expand there quickly before.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so I did that. That was, so probably, I think I left my house at 8 o'clock. Obviously, we're there all day, good day as usual. And then I had a 60th party at the Mount, and I got home about 20 to 3 in the morning. So yesterday was an absolute write-off. I moved once, and that was to open the front door for the Uber driver for my KFC, and that was it. So it's just not big or clever to get pissed these days, unfortunately, at my age.
To be fair, one of the questions later is about hangovers, so I'm sure you'll have some good answers. Yeah, we had the Content Creators Cup on Saturday. We got to the semi-finals. We had a good run, to be fair. But yeah, it was a long day with the gaps in between games. My legs are still hurting now, to be fair. Yesterday I was a complete write-off, and the missus wanted to go shopping in Telford yesterday. I was like, oh, please. So I sort of was sliding across the floor at Telford Shopping Centre yesterday as well. But yeah, semi-final finish for the Talking Wolves boys, so it wasn't too bad in the end. But Joe, it's good to have you back. How you been keeping?
Yeah, all good, mate. Obviously, when I played last year, we won, and I didn't play this year, and you didn't. So
makes you think.
Obviously, one copy does make you think. All good though, mate. All good. How's things with you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we could have done with you in the end because we were players short in the end, and that's probably, in my opinion, the reason why we fell short in the semi-final.
I agree. Obviously, I agree.
Yeah. George, to be fair, you said you got back late. Liam, who was our striker on Saturday, he was sending us pictures about 7, 8 a.m. in the group chat, and he said he hadn't been home. So I mean, he had a little bit of a wild night, I think. Did you stay at the Mount till 3, or did you end up going out?
No, stayed. I didn't know. I was when he sent that photo in about Pop World. I thought, I can't go to Pop World in a tuxedo. I can't go to Pop World dressed normally, let alone in a tuxedo.
I've seen worse dates in Pop World, Jordan.
Yeah, I know. So
Pop Zone, actually. Pop Zone.
Sorry.
Rebranded.
Respect to Pop Zone. Yeah, there you go. So I didn't join him. I'm glad I didn't, to be fair, because I think I might have been divorced.
Yeah. I've not been since it's rebranded. I mean, I think you get to an age though where you sort of appreciate a Pop Zone, Pop World night out. I think, So I'm sort of, but that's where my mates tend to go now. I haven't been for a while though, like I say. So we'll move on. We'll move on now to the football itself. Like I said, since the last pod, I think it's been a win in the Carabao Cup, the defeat against Everton, and we'll come on to the Newcastle game as well. So we'll try and sort of merge everything into one because it's been a little while since we last caught up. And obviously we'll be back to normal next week. And of course the Betmate games as well. If you want to get involved in those, I assume the Wolves game against Newcastle will be part of the 3 p.m. kickoffs. If you want to get involved in the Betmate, I'll make sure I leave a link in the top of the description in the fantasy football games. And for the next game, the Leeds game at home, I'll try and get a free game sorted so everybody listening can try and jump in and join in on that so we can see who can come out on top. But Joe, we'll talk about the Everton game with the frustrating one in the end for Wolves, a 3-2 defeat. Probably a little bit closer than it should have been. I think Everton on the day were probably much better than Wolves, to be completely honest. I was a little bit blinded to it, if I'm honest. On my reaction video after the game, I sort of said how poor Wolves were and how Everton sort of sitting on the ball a little bit and time wasting, which I don't think the Toffees appreciated too much in the comment section, to be honest. But yeah, I think in hindsight, it was a much better Everton performance and Wolves, again, letting themselves down a little bit at Molyneux.
Yeah, I think they were just comfortably the better team. The 3 goals that we conceded were very poor, all for different reasons. Defensively, we look a little bit shaky, which is quite worrying. I'm sure that'll correct itself, hopefully. I don't see why it wouldn't. I think part of that would be due to the fact that, I think if you look at the players they've got through the door, I think even Kieran Dewsbury Hall was still through the door a couple of weeks before we played them. Mm-hmm. Grealish was kind of getting up to match fitness. So I think partly a product of the fact that their squad's a little bit more settled than ours, and they've done some really good recruitment in fairness. But it was, I think, there were pockets where we looked half decent. I think we same against Man City, same against Bournemouth in different ways. We've looked decent in spells in games. We don't know what we can sustain it. So that's something hopefully that will improve over the season. But it was slightly worrying. I couldn't necessarily tell you what our best team is now, if I'm honest. There are players that I think that if you take the Manetzi cross for Hwang out of it, there's two players there really that performed okay in spells, but we shouldn't be in a position where those two players now are starting. Obviously, notwithstanding the Strand Larsen injury, which I'm sure we won't see Hwang starting anytime soon again. But it was a worrying one for me. I think that if you concede early in the second half, it's always going to be a problem. It's something that I wouldn't have expected a Vissel Pereira team to do. We look a little bit powder puff defensively at the moment, so obviously I'm sure we'll come on to Agbadu and how he's playing at the moment, but he looks very shaky to me.
Yeah, it's a frustration because I think games like this as well, George, we go into it, and I mentioned it probably on the last podcast on the preview as well. They're games that I think both sets of fans will look at and think, we can get something out of this game. But you would have hoped at Molineux we can maybe, take advantage and get something out of the match. But, another defeat leaves Wolves pointless at the moment. And like Joe said, the manner of which the goals were conceded was really frustrating. And we went into the summer thinking that back line was probably our strongest area of the pitch. And all of a sudden, you look at it now and you're a little bit concerned. Of course, we've got players like Krejci who will probably come in, no doubt, at some point. Will a fit Mosquera go into that team as well? Who knows? But Manetzi is a player that Joe mentioned there. We had debates probably every week, every other week at the back end of last season about Marshall Manetzi. Obviously, it's a debate again now. Due to availability and fitness of certain players, yes, maybe you understand why he started Everton against Everton, Jord, but it's one of those still. I mean, he tops certain stats, but it tends to be with the running and so on. But his technical ability and so on is in my opinion, is what is letting him down at the moment. Is there a future for him still in this starting lineup, do you think, for Wolves? In terms of what Vitor Pereira's profiles and so on that he's looking at, Manetzi seems to fit that, but obviously the fans don't seem to be on side with that at the moment.
No. I think on the whole, the fan base probably not. Like I'm a fan of him. Like I say, last year again, we've had this debate many times. I think he suits certain games. I think he suits certain scenarios, and I think he would do a better job if you played him in his natural position. But he's never going to play over Andre or Gomez. So that's sort of where we are with him. I think Marshall Manetzi would do a very good job for you when you're playing some of the bigger teams. Where you go less of the ball, pressing, breaking up play, because he does do all that. I don't care what anyone says, he does do that, and he does make a bit of a nuisance of himself. But I was a bit disappointed after that game that people are still going after Manetzi, still going after Hwang, and like I say, the back three were embarrassing.
Mm.
I think Bueno was the best out of the lot. I still don't think he had a great game, but they were embarrassing. And like talking about Everton, looking at Everton, I would say we were on a very sort of level playing field with Everton in terms of where we were at the end of last season from a squad perspective. I'd even say we were better than them squad-wise. They obviously moved into the new stadium that can attract different players. Obviously, Grealish has gone there, and that's someone that we would never have been able to get. But he was just the best player on the pitch by a million miles, and he was a joy to watch, to be honest with you. And I'm glad that he's gone to a club where, David Moyes is going to get the best out of him. That's simple as that. Dewsbury Hall, he'd have been a good signing for us. He's gone to Everton. And with Illman and Dyer, that's a good three floating behind a striker. The biggest disappointment for me, we can talk about Manetzi, you can talk about Hwang, you can talk about the defence though, is the midfield too against Everton, because Andre and Gomez, me, Joe, I know you do as well, like wax lyrical, like how good they are as a pair and how they compare and how they stack up against most midfields in the Premier League, if not in European football. Like as a two, you put them on a pedestal to say, yeah, I think they're very, very good. However, against Everton, they're up against Idrissa Gana Gueye, who's 34 now, I think. his best years are past him. Still a decent, solid player. I'm not going to dispute that. And James Garner, who, for me, was the best player on the pitch. I know you can talk about Grealish. He was everywhere. He broke up play. He was brilliant. To be fair, James Garner was that day. How you can talk about tactics, you can talk about formations, you can talk about everything else. How have Andre and Joe Gomez lost a midfield battle against Idrissa Gana Gueye and James Garner? For me, that's not acceptable because they're a different league to those two as a pair, and they were miles off it. And I think there might be some things in the Andre thing where obviously he got dropped for the Bournemouth game. I think he walked off after the Everton game as well. Might give a clap and stuff. Like, he's obviously disillusioned. He's come to Wolves, and both of them are at the Brazil squads now, and I can't see him getting back in at the moment. So I think there is a little bit of that, but you know, I'll sing the praises to the cows come home, but I'm also going to be fair and balanced. And when I feel like it needs calling out, it needs calling out. They haven't been good enough this season, the pair of them. And for us to have any chance of being competitive in this league, i.e. finishing mid-table, they need to be playing at a level that they can play to. And they've been a million miles off it so far.
Yeah, I think it was I think it was the second goal, and I pointed this out where Andre I think Chachua had won the ball, and he probably should have cleared it, but Andre was in a little bit of space, asked for the ball, and took it off Jackson Chachua. But as soon as he was under pressure, he had to either kick it into touch or clear it, and he tries to play himself out of trouble. Ultimately, we lose the ball, and that's when Everton go and score the second goal. So I do agree, and I am. There is that little slight concern, like you mentioned there. Is there something going on behind the scenes? You know, those two, you could almost build your team around them slightly. I know people are concerned about the lack of creativity those two may well bring. But, you know, with the formation that we've got, you can get that creativity from other areas, whether it's your wing backs, whether it's your two number 10s ahead of them as well. But yeah, they've had a slowish start to the campaign, I think. But the back three in particular, I mean, Totti came back in after his suspension against West Ham United. Emmanuel Agbadou has been just out of sorts. Just I don't know what it is, Joe. I don't know his quality of passing. I mean, I don't know if he got away with it a couple of times or, you know, at the back end of last season, but I don't know, he's trying those passes to break the lines, and rather than actually, I think he's finding his target, but the quality of pass or the power on the pass is just completely wrong, and he's putting his own teammates under a little bit of pressure.
I think a lot of the time, if you look at want to move on from last season, but if you look at the players that we've lost in terms of Semedo, Cunha, Aït-Nouri, you got players who can maybe get you out of jail. Semedo can carry the ball forward, Cunha's going to drop deep and take the ball off you, and Aït-Nouri can do pretty much whatever he wants with the ball. So I think, and this counts for Andre as well, they haven't got that get out of jail now. They haven't got, they've only got to beat one man to get the team up the pitch, whereas now you've got to beat 2, 3, 4, especially when you're being surrounded by the likes of Iliman and Joy. Beto doesn't stop, to be fair to him. His big physical presence. Jack Grealish, Dewsbury, all they're a high energy team, really. With Agbadou, I don't think it's as severe as a lot of people want to make it out to be. You read a lot online about how he's absolutely fell off a cliff. Now, I think he just played very well last season. He was probably above what his level is last season for parts. And I think part of that is when you've looked at the back three for the last 3 years that have been fairly weak, relatively speaking, and you put someone like Emmanuel Agbadou in, he's obviously going to look a step above because he is. But if he has a bad game, then which he's had a couple of bad games now. He was average in pre-season. I don't think he was as bad as people make out, but he wasn't great. I think he's obviously going to look that way. He's a player that takes a lot of risks. So as a centre back, if you're going to take a lot of risks, you've got to have someone next to you who's going to get you out of jail. I don't think he's had that. Thought Santi Bueno played okay against Everton. I don't think he had a bad game, so to speak. He was definitely the best of the three, in the middle. And I think Ladislav Krejci will help when he comes in, because I think that to me is the key to unlocking Emmanuel Agbadou, having someone of a similar frame, of a similar better ability on the ball. Krejci's really good on the ball, so someone who can come in and take a bit of that pressure off, because it's obvious that Vitor wants to play that way. He doesn't just want to play diagonals over the top. There are a couple of options for a better ball for Jackson Chachua on the right, and we would have been in. I was having a chat with a mate of mine last week talking about Pickford. I think the way we were playing on last Saturday against Everton, Pickford's perfect for offsetting that because he's straight off his line. You've got balls over the top to Chachu, which for me, that's what I want to see. If you've got a wing back who can get up the pitch, get the ball on a diag over to him, but Pickford's so alert and so quick to be off his line. 3 or 4 times he kind of sniffed that out. So I think that's an opportunity moving forward. I do think we've got, even with Muller-Wolf or with Bueno on both sides, I think we've got the ability to do that now. But I think with Agbadou, he just needs time to settle down. I don't see it as being a massive problem. Obviously, when everyone's online, it has to be a huge issue. But I think with Andre and with Agbadou to a degree, they just need a bit of support around them. The problem's going to be now Andre really has to start every game because there's no one else in there unless we're going to play Manetzi next to Joe Gomez, which, if I'm honest, I'm not completely against for the right game. If we need the legs in there, Andre's a brilliant footballer, but he's not got the legs, and that's where I think I'm sure we'll come on to the transfer window, but that's where there's an avenue there to move things around, whether it's Manetzi or Bellegarde. I know fans won't like it, but it's an option. So yeah, I think with Agbadou, it'll calm itself down, and he's probably just regressing to the kind of player that he actually is. Get Krejci next to him, and I think you'll see an improvement.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with the back three. Ladislav Krejci, we didn't see him come on in the end. He was about to, and I think Hugo Bueno went down injured. We've had a few questions. I know Gully had done a video back end of last week as well about how the squad was looking, and through to AFCON, which we'll talk about later on as well. He actually asked a question as well, and this is what he mentioned on his video. His back three potentially, or his strongest preferred back three, would be Agbadou on the right, Krejci in the middle, and Totti Gomez on the left. But I would have said, with the signing of Krejci, I think he would have been an immediate replacement for Totti. Not immediate, but like he would have been the option to replace Totti long term. I don't know what you boys think.
I would assume so, but you've made Totti Gomez your captain now.
Yeah, very true.
So it comes back to this problem of you've made him captain. It's almost like the Gary O'Neill under Lamina. Yeah, I think it'll rear its ugly head a little bit that the people are going to be saying Totti's got to come out the side because you're captain, so what do you do? And you can't shoehorn him anywhere else. I don't want to see Totti Gomez playing left wing back for Wolverhampton Wanderers. No. If we're playing a back four, I think he could do a competent job as a left back, but no. But then if you play Totti left back and you've got Muller-Wolf and Bueno sitting there, they'll be like, well, you're just going to cause problems. And you've almost caused a headache for yourself. I think it'll be long term in terms of. I think the plan will be Mosquera, Agbadou, Krejci. That's what I think it'll be, personally. But how quickly we get to that, I'm not sure. But I think Vitor's almost got a free pass because how bad it's been just to go and do it on the weekend against Newcastle. If that's what you think, or that's your plan, now's the time to just do it and play what you perceive to be your best 11. And I know we'll get on to Newcastle shortly, but there might be a few changing parts into that team come the weekend from what we saw at Everton.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I don't dislike the idea of Agbadou on the right either, to be fair. Obviously, we don't know much about Krejci, what quality he's going to bring to the team. But if he's as good at, he's got this passing range that we think he's got through the middle in that sort of Connor Cody type role, and then Joe, like you're saying, can produce those diags, out to the right hand side and so on.
I think there's 2 parts. With the first part being, I don't think it matters as much as people seem to think it does. I don't see Agbadou moving out of the middle on the basis that he's played there for 9 months now. I don't think we rip up everything that we've done with him and just shift him out to the right. I don't see that happening personally. Mosquera is a player that Vitor likes. You can tell that he likes him. You can tell that there's a buzz around the club that he's back fit, which I see it being Krejci, Agbadou, Mosquera. That being said, I think any combination of it doesn't really change much structurally. You've got 3 players in there who Agbadou and Krejci have obviously got better passing range than Mosquera has, but they're all physically equivalent. He's signed them for their physicality. It's just a benefit that playing at that level that they can pass a ball as well. So I don't think it hugely matters. I don't put too much kind of onus on the fact that he's made Totti captain, because he's going to be the club captain, which is fine. But I do think they've grown a team now where they've got leaders on the pitch. They've also signed Krejci, who's come from captaining clubs, so at a young age. So I don't see it as being a massive problem. I do think there'll be a period of time where we'd probably do see Totti Gomez playing left wing back in certain games, unfortunately, which it wouldn't be on top of my list of things that I pay £750 a year to watch. But I do see that happening, unfortunately, at some point.
But Joe, just to say though, if you're Moller Wolf or you Bueno, and then Totti's playing left wing back, that's for me. I mean that for me that's poor. That's poor management, really.
Yeah, I don't see it being a frequent thing. If we have a suspension to one of the wing backs and we're playing against a better team, one of the top 6, top 8 teams, then I can see him going with a more defensive wing back. I don't think Totti's absolutely dreadful at wing backs. Gary O'Neill.
Actually, I thought he did okay there. But I was
he's done it at periods. But Jord's right. We should, as a Premier League club of our standing, we shouldn't be playing Totti Gomez, I would argue, at all, let alone at left wing back. And to be honest, they've obviously tried to address that. They've signed a left-footed centre back that can play football. So for €30 million, everyone had a massive problem with. But to me, I think they've done the right thing, and I don't think they ever sign a player. Very rarely, they've signed Krejci, who's not guaranteed to be a centre back straight away. Tolu Arokadara, who's €30 million, who's not guaranteed to be a starter straight away. Jackson Tachua, by definition of being our only senior half decent right wing back, will be, but I do think there are more options there now. So it just gives Vitor the freedom to do that, rather than it being this is now our starting 11. Everyone else can fight out for a place on the bench. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah, it was. I mean, other than the sort of disastrous performance, and it will be interesting with the selection against Newcastle, which we'll come on to as well. But one of the sort of shining lights, I suppose, Jord, from that performance was Fer Lopez, who only came on for sort of the back end of the game, but just the quality on the ball, his confidence to make things happen. I think first time he picked up the ball, he played a really decent through ball in towards Minetti, and then, like you said, Joe, with Pickford coming off his line quite quickly, he gobbled it up. But Wolves fans, Andy, I saw some comments from Everton fans, Jord, getting a little bit excited about the potential of Fer Lopez and maybe him getting more minutes over the next few weeks.
I think he will get more minutes, and I think the fact he's only had like 6 months realistically of senior football at Celta Vigo last year, I think it's really unfair for him to come in and for us to expect him to be this player, right? I think we lost Cunha, who we know is a massive source of our goals, and then you've obviously got Arias, who's been quiet so far. And Lopez, and I think they're just sort of adapting to the league. I think for Lopez looks every bit of a player. I saw him in the flesh when we played Lens at Bescott, and I thought he looked really tidy, really good. And it's that what fans will like is that when you've got a Minetti playing in that position, maybe, or Bellegarde, they do a job, right? They do a job, and they're there to do a certain job. But for Lopez, you can see every time he gets the ball, he's trying to break lines, he's trying to split the defence, he's trying to take that. Well, it's not always going to come off, but he's almost taking that gamble. And it's what Pablo Sarabia did for us last year. And again, fans didn't necessarily like Pablo Sarabia at times. I thought he gave the ball away a little bit too much. That'll be the same with Fer Lopez, but he's trying to do things with it. And I think for Fer Lopez, the only problem is we've signed him for this system. And I genuinely think to get the best out of a player like Fer Lopez, you've almost got to match up what with Everton did, really. Almost have like a player 4-2-3-1 and let Fer Lopez be that one who just floats. Almost like, in between. And I know Everton were really interchangeable, and we could potentially be like that with, Arias and Fer Lopez and whoever else you wanted to play there. We could actually do a similar thing. I know Ben be talking and going back to a back four, but I'm almost at a point now is with Wolves anyway. We've been that bad defensively in a 5, and I've been a massive advocate of it's our DNA. That's what we do. I think to get the best out of Arias, to get the best out of Fer Lopez, I think we might have to swap formation and system, because I don't think necessarily what we're playing right now suits either of them, and we're definitely not getting the best out of John Arias, who when I watched him in the Club World Cup I can't believe he's joined Wolves. But now watching him in the first 3 games, you'd probably say, well, I know why he's joined Wolves because this is level, but it's been disappointing from him. yeah, sorry, back to Fer Lopez. Yeah, I think he's got a massive future for us. I do. I just don't think if we're playing the same formation system every week, which I think we will certainly for the next few games anyway. I don't think he starts because I don't think Vitor Pereira necessarily trusts him to do the defensive side of it.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
It'll be interesting. I can't see a. I've seen it suggested on social media as well. The change in shape. I can't see him coming away from a back five. I mean, I do agree with you. We're certainly not getting the best out of our more creative players. I think for one, John Arias was getting playing his best football in Brazil off the right hand side, and we've not seen that yet. I think, I mean, there will be probably a situation where Wolves are chasing games and you see both Tolu and Jorgen Strand-Larsen on the pitch together like we did towards the end of the West Ham game, which, we won and everyone enjoyed looking at and seeing. You got Sasha and Jorgen on with John Arias behind them. I think there will be a situation like that throughout the season. But, Joe, I mean, for me as well, I can't see the change in system. But that front three, is there a possibility of seeing maybe Jean Arias, Fer Lopez, and Jorgen Strand-Larsen? I think that's probably your strongest front three in terms of creative quality and so on.
I think in terms of profile, if you replace Matheus Cunha, I think a lot of people think we've replaced Matheus Cunha with John Arias because of the timing of the transfer. But if you look at style of play, Fer Lopez is a lot more similar to Cunha in the respect of he likes to drop deep and pick the ball up. Every single clip I watched of Fer Lopez last season, in limited minutes, to be honest, was dropping deep and taking balls off centre backs in some cases. So I think that point that we referred to about getting Andre and Agbadou the support they need to get the ball up the pitch in terms of carrying the ball, he's really the only player in the squad that can do that, which is a bit of a problem. John Arias isn't a top world class ball carrier. When he's actually on the ball, he can do things with it, but the issue is we're not getting the ball to him enough, and that'll be the case with Strand-Larsen. It was the case with him last season. He made a lot of minimal chances. You can't expect him to carry that over and do that again. If we're talking styles, for me, arguably the best way we could set up would, I can see a world where Tolu and Strand-Larsen are on the pitch together and we try and change the way that we play and go more direct. If we've got the wing backs that we've got two target men, but Strand-Larsen's a little bit more than that. Tolu is literally that. That's what he does. He can hold the ball up. I do see we've got the players in the system now to play a little bit in a bit of a different way. I don't think we've got the players now to play the way we played last season, which is a bit of a concern given we had a relatively good end to the season, or kind of middle to end of the season. So I'd like to see more of Fer Lopez. For me, I think there's something that Bellegarde can offer as well. I know Bellegarde came on, I think, at half time against Everton, from memory. I think he got some minutes anyway. So that I think Bellegarde often gets forgotten in these discussions for one reason or another. But I think he'll work back. He can carry the ball. I think he's maybe slightly undervalued, not just by the fans, but by Vitor as well. There's been times when Vitor's seen him as a key man, and the start of this season he hasn't quite been that. So. I think I don't think we'll move on to the transfer window. I'm sure, but I think the squad's in a decent enough position if we play a certain way, but we're just narrowing the way that we can play given the profile of players that we've got in the squad.
Yeah, Jean-Marc Bellegarde, he came on just after the third goal. Came on the same sort of batch of subs when Rodrigo Gomez and so on came on. Again, Rodrigo's. I had a weird feeling he may have departed towards the end of the window, only because I think good player, and I think probably 90% of Wolves fans want him to crack on and get more opportunities in the first team, but he's just in a real weird position at the moment where obviously Vitor doesn't seem being good enough to be one of the forward players, and he's not necessarily good enough to be a first team wing back. But what he can do is add that energy and attacking threat when we are chasing matches, and that's what he did. And obviously he got his goal against Everton, which he could have got the equaliser right at the death as well. He came so close to scoring an equaliser, which would have been great as well. But it will be interesting to see, Wolves. I think like a 5-3-2, Tolu and Jorgen up top. And I think if you're sort of being a little bit more cautious in games, I think Jean-Marc Bellegarde's probably your third midfielder in that anyway, Joe, because he can hold and he can be that attacking outlet as well, to be fair. And then obviously if there's a game where you want to go a little bit more attacking, I think you could play your Ariases or your Fair Lopez's or whatever.
I don't think this box midfield works. I don't think this kind of 2 10s and 2 6s works. To me, it's too predictable to me. There's you mentioned Arias. All the best work he did in Brazil was from the right. He looks far too narrow to me to be able to do anything with it. Obviously, if he's playing with Hwang, that kind of creates a problem because he's not got the physical outlet really. So for me, the 5-3-2, given the makeup of the squad, probably would make more sense because Arias, say Arias is the third man because I think he could be, or he could be the second man up top with Strand Larsen and give him a bit more freedom. But I don't see, having watched quite a lot of John Arias previously, and Jord mentions the Club World Cup, and beyond, the way he plays doesn't remotely fit the way that we're playing at the moment. I find that a really odd. A good transfer because he's a good player, but he doesn't suit the way that we're playing now. And he's, it's not like he's 22, 23, and we can adapt him. He's an established player. So I'd like to see something a little bit different now. I think we've become far too predictable and far too rigid. So it'd be interesting to see what the next few months look like.
Yeah, hopefully the international break has come at a good time for Vitor Pereira because come up with some new ideas. Unfortunately, I think I saw Wolves put a record amount of internationals out in one break for Wolves, even without a couple of the. Hwang's not gone with South Korea, and a couple of the Brazilian boys obviously still haven't got out as well. But I suppose it bodes well in one sense, but in another way, he hasn't got those players with him to work on ideas. But hopefully, in the back of his head, Vitor knows what he wants to do. Again, another thing Gully pointed out in his video that he uploaded last week: the physicality, the amount of players 6 foot and above. That are now in the squad as well. Probably the most that we've had in a Premier League campaign. So I am intrigued. I don't think we'll see many changes against Newcastle in terms of system, maybe in personnel, but Leeds will be an interesting one because that is a game that if nothing comes to fruition on Saturday against Newcastle, that Leeds game is a must win really for Wolves, to be honest. And if not, I think there'll be a lot of pressure on Vitor, who seems to have had a lot of pressure put on him by Jeff Shee as well. We saw it during the week, a video, little interview that Jeff Shee done with, I think he probably had the right intentions in doing it, but because he's burnt so many bridges already with the fan base and supporters, not a lot of people took much notice of what he said. Jord, for you, how I listened to it was that, yes, they worked together on everything, but like I said, he did sort of push everything towards Vitor's direction. And in my opinion, if things start to go wrong, Jeff's done probably what Jeff Shee tends to do and put the blame on somebody else.
Yeah, I think to start off with that question, I think he's almost damned if he does or damned if he doesn't. Like, people ask for communication. You get the communication, and then people moan about what's being communicated on the videos. Mm-hmm. So for that incident, like you say, I think he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I was quite happy to see him talk because I think we don't see a lot of it. And again, he doesn't have to talk. He's not contracted to talk. He can do what he wants. So at least he's sort of fronting it a little bit. I think where he lost credibility with a lot of fans is within the first 10 seconds. The soundbite is we had a good window. Sorry. Now you can sort of look at the window and a barometer on it, and people are going to have sliding scales on this. But how the window went at the end of it, where we're saying we're crying out for centre midfielder, should I say? We've lost 3 out of 3 in the league, and then within the first 10 seconds they've had a good window. Everyone at that point is just going to switch off and just start slating him, which is what happened. I don't necessarily agree we had a good window. I don't think we've had a disastrous window. Like, again, what you see on social media, you see, it's a disaster. All this. I don't think it's been a disastrous window, but I couldn't hand on heart say it was a good window myself. But he spoke on there. Some of the things I agreed with, some of it I didn't. I think he's lets himself down a little bit where he's then talking about we want cup runs, we want silver, we want to get back into Europe, and it's like, but literally last year you were saying Wolves might not be the club for you if you want success and stuff. So there's almost a contradiction there, which contradicted what he said before that, which is we were going to be the next Man City. And again, feelings and conversations are fluid, and KPIs and metrics change over time. So that's not a problem. I haven't necessarily got a problem with that. But I would say if you're saying that you want a cup run and you want to get back into Europe, I would very strongly argue the case of, well, you haven't really given us, or Foes haven't really given us the tools to be able to do that, or even suggest that you're trying to do that. Because let's be honest, we've won one game in 8 seasons in August. So I think if it was a couple seasons, you could say that was a coincidence. I think there's enough data there to show and to suggest that Fosen, Jeff Shea, the Wolves managers, what we've got now, and throughout that time period, we haven't given ourselves the best chance and put the best foot forward to actually do that. So I think, again, I like they spoke. I think it was very much would have been a diluted, sort of controlled environment, because it's obviously run by the club. I'm sure all the questions were already, pre-vetted and all that sort of stuff. So I like that he's spoken. I just think he loses all credibility when he's saying it's a good window within 10 seconds. And like I say, in that interview, and amongst other things that we found out over the weekend, Dave, where he's had conversations with the trust as well, it almost feels to me that Jeff Shee's cleaning his own arse. So when shit hits a fan, he can go, it was all down to Vitor and Tete. So I think it's very much he's basically covering his arse, mate, and he thinks if he get out in front of the fans, if it all blows up, which there's a good chance it will, how it's going so far, he can go, well, it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
Vitor asked for all this. So, read into that what you will.
I think that's what he's tried to do, because if again, he said on the video that he's not panicking right now, which is fair enough, because past experience, Wolves have started off slowly, and we always seem to remain a Premier League team. Even under Nuno, we had slow starts as well. But I think he knows if things went wrong with Vitor early on, unless he said something, everyone would have still put the blame on Jeff Shea and Fosen and the higher ups at this club. Whereas, now he's said this, like you said, he's saying things behind closed doors as well. I think he is trying to cover his back, Joe. I don't know if you caught the video and what your thoughts and thoughts were on it.
I watched it and I had no problem with it, which it seems like I was the only one that didn't have a problem with it generally. But obviously his opening line, I think part of this is, in fairness to Jeff, as much as he's obviously not a competent person to be in that position, I would say, relative to other people in other positions in the Premier League, he wears his heart on his sleeve to a degree, and you can tell that when he speaks. And I think football's full of robots, and we've had plenty of them running the club before. And one thing you can say about him is he's present and he's part of the club, and that's on account of people who are in the club. You can see that he's obviously doing staged interviews like this, which it was obviously very, very much staged, but he's still visible. For good or for bad, he's visible, which I think there's a lot to be said for that. If you look at someone like Golden Sullivan historically at West Ham, and you look at people like this, then I'd still much rather be in the position that we're in the fact of we've gone and spent 150 million quid this summer, and we've reinvested money into the squad, which I think is a myth that people tend to kind of peddle. That we've spent the money that we've made. We've not spent anything more than that, but we've spent the money that we've made. They could have quite easily took that back out and not invested in the squad. So that's one point. But you can judge the window in two ways. You can judge it internally, as in, do the club feel they did okay, they got what they wanted out of the window. You've got to take that on face value. He's saying that they think they've had a good window. That's fine. I've got no problem with that. But then really, you can only judge the window retrospectively. You can't judge the window in September. You can't judge it in August. You can't judge it in June or July. You can only judge it halfway through the season, end of the season, in 2 or 3 years' time, to go back and say, oh, okay, Krejci, Molo Wolf, Chachua, Tolua Rokadari, John Arias, Fer Lopez. If all these players end up being good players for Wolves over a period of 2 or 3 years, and they move on for big money, which is, let's be fair, what Wolves want out of it, then it was a good window. It's as simple as that. That's really all it comes down to. If we finish 14th, 15th every season, we're having a decent window, because we're losing players every year, and we're obviously replacing them to maintain the level that we're at. We're not replacing them to move up to finish 7th, because that's not what we're doing. We're maintaining a squad that can finish 12th to 16th, 17th.
But sorry, Joe, I was going to say then. So going back to sort of what I said about where he's mentioned about cup runs and getting back into Europe.
Yeah.
where you're saying about we're going to, if we finish 13th, 14th, we've done the job. Which again, I agree. I don't think Fosun would take 17th every season, in my opinion, just to stay in the league.
I agree.
Is this squad we've got right now? And again, I know I'm not saying we can judge it because the season's got another 35 games plus X amount of cup games left. Do you honestly think like this squad right now is built for a European charge, shall I say?
No.
And by charge, I mean getting 7th, 8th. So this is where I think fans then sort of go, well, if when we first got up in the Premier League and we had a win, we had probably our best ever window, and a lot of that would have been Mendes led because we got Moutinho £5 million, Patricio. We know what went on, and we got into Europe. That felt to me, even that season after, where we then doubled down, spent a lot more money. That felt to me a club that this is our trajectory. We're going for this. This is where we want to get to. I don't think that Jeff Shee can, hand on heart at least, say on that interview, we want a cup run and we want to get into Europe. Like, I want to take Maya Jama to Nando's, but that ain't gonna happen, is it?
I think no.
So it's like you've got to. Yeah, we never know, but it's like, you know what I mean. It's that sort of thing of, and that's only a soundbite. I'm happily married by that, but I'm just trying to say, like, it's that thing of, you can say you want something, but you've almost got to. You're not,
You've got to show it as well.
You've got to show it. There's no, like, for me, there's no substance to what you're saying there.
Well, I think it's a valid point, Jord. But I think in the opposite way, if he comes out and says, we're fighting to finish 17th, then the fans would make just as much of a thing about it. So I think
completely agree.
You're completely right in your statement that he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. So to see him, me being an eternal optimist, to hear him say, we could go on a cup run, and it seemed to me like he was very much saying we could do this. Not we've funded it to do this, and we are going to do it. He said it was very much you never know, which is true. It's probably the message that he sends around the club to players. We're not necessarily going to finish 6th or 7th, but you never know, and that's something that I think as a club it's the best they can do at the moment. He can't come out and say we're actively targeting finishing 17th and staying up on goal difference last game of the season, but there's got to be some sort of desire or want or wish to push on in some way. And at least for me, to hear him say that, I thought, okay, I'll take it with a pinch of salt. It won't happen, but fair play to you. If that's your desire, that's brilliant. I can't take anything negative from that personally. But the proof's in the pudding, and that they can go and spend 50 million, they can spend 200 million, they can spend 300 million. It only really matters how well they've spent that money. So the issue for me, and people like this, I'll try and be as balanced as I possibly can be. People want to wear shit. People want to wear Fosun are fucking useless. They want to wear all this. But objectively, over the course of 8 years in the Premier League, we've had peaks and we've had troughs. We finished 7th in a period where the top half of the league was dire. We finished there largely because of that. And if you look at Forest last season, there's a case for
I don't disagree with that.
Similarly there, so we've overachieved. We've regressed to the mean. I would say our average where we should be targeting finishing based on our squad from 2018 to now is 14th, and more often than not, we've finished in and around 14th. We've been there or thereabouts. I don't foresee that changing. I'm seeing a lot of non-Wolves fans saying Wolves are going to go down. Wolves are in my bottom 3 to go down. Whereas realistically speaking, and this is my frustration with it, I saw the Athletic, and this is really quite irresponsible, in my opinion, doing a grading of teams' transfer windows A to E. No one has a clue. Newcastle have apparently had a great transfer window because they've signed Walter Marder for 65 million quid, whatever it is. Wolves have had a terrible transfer window because no one's heard of a lot of the players that we've signed, which you could argue the Brightons and the Brentfords of this world in the past 5 years have done that every year, whereas they've built up credit in the bank where people say, I've never heard of these players, but they must be good because Brentford and Brighton have signed them. Wolves signed these players, and these must be shit because Wolves have signed them. So I think there's a degree where the dust's got to settle, really, for me.
Yeah, but I was going to say, again, I think I mentioned it on the last podcast, I feel it's because we've got a bit of an identity crisis at the moment as a club, because we were one way, we were very much heavily leaning on George Mendes, and we were signing players that we probably had no right or divine right to sign, but they were coming here, and it was exciting, and there's a bit of a project and all that sort of stuff. Whereas now we've sort of said we want to be self-sustainable. We want to spend what we bring in, and we want to be the club, that you come to be here for 2-3 years, and you get a big move on the back of it. Now, Brighton are the outliers in this. They've done it for years upon years upon years, and that's why when Brighton sign a player, they go, well, they must be good, because Brighton very rarely miss. Or if a manager goes there, it's like Brighton rarely miss. Whereas now we're trying to do that, and people are looking at it going, well, Wolves haven't really bought well in the last few years. Like, you could look at it from a Guedes, Fabio, like those, like the outliers, because we spent a lot of money on them. They're seen as failures, and I think that's fair enough. Yeah. Whereas I think we could get to that model, but if you've got an offer from Wolves, and then you've got Brighton and Brentford, for example, that are also saying we could offer you the same thing, people will go there because the model's more proven to be right over there. And I'm not saying we can't do that, but that's where I think we've got this massive identity crisis, and where I think a lot of our problems are, and where we're getting rejected by a lot of players at the moment, is we're not attractive enough because the projects, we're not finishing high enough at the table where players go, you know what, I'll go there and I can compete. Secondly, I think there's players with potential that are looking at Wolves, and we're offering them this, and they're going, well, I don't think you've proved that enough for me to take a chance on coming to Wolves right now, especially when I could go to a Brighton, a Palace, a Brentford. And I think that's where
I definitely think there's a degree of that. And I think if they come in and see we've got a new recruitment set up, in the fact of, and I couldn't quite gauge this from the Jeff Sheens view, and this is, he spoke very little about Domenico Teti, which I found quite interesting. The fact that he name checked him a few times. He said, I speak to Vitor every day, which is fine. But the issue for me is that I don't quite know what that setup is, what that looks like. So I assume when players are going in, it does look a little bit kind of up and down to me. I think it looks a bit unpredictable. So I can understand why players would be kind of on the fence about moves. That being said, we've signed a lot of players. We've signed a lot of decent players. So that's what I perceive as decent players. If they have a shocking season,
I think another issue is that the amount of English teams in Europe as well. You've got teams that I would class as similar stature in terms of quality to us. You got your Forests and Crystal Palace. Obviously, Palace won the cup. Forest consistently have been better than this last couple of years, but you've got those teams all of a sudden where Wolves would have probably had the upper hand on. Now you're sort of below them because they've got European football as well, and I think that's a massive, especially for younger players throughout Europe. That's a massive thing. If you're getting the offer of playing Premier League football and you've got the option of playing in Europe as well, I think it makes life very difficult for Wolves.
But I think it'll be hard for us now, Dave. Sorry to say that for us to. So I think Forest might go on to another level to us now as well, because, and again, I've said a few times that Marinakis is batshit crazy. I want to work for him. I don't necessarily think it's destined to work. But the one thing you can say about it is they've got into the Europa League by hook or by crook, and he's really doubled down on it. They've spent money on players, and I think they've overpaid on Amari Hutchinson, for example. There's a lot of Wolves fans that would have had Amari Hutchinson at Wolves. James McAtee, a lot of people would have had James McAtee here at Wolves. And at least they've gone for it. And I think that's where the frustration with Wolves fans is that Forest, the first sniff they've had of getting into Europe, they've really doubled down and gone, you know what, we want to be here for the next couple of years as well. We're going to have a good go at it. And again, it's no guarantee the money they've spent is going to give them that success, like Joe said. But I think that's where the biggest frustration is from Wolves fans is I don't think Jeff has the credibility to come out on there and say, we could be this. We would like to get back into Europe. We would like to win a cup. But the last time we got there, we didn't act like we wanted to repeat it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the fans.
That's totally a valid point. You can only go with the information you've got in hand, can't you? And if they've proven themselves, and this is coming back to the point, Brighton and Brentford are judged positively because they've done it in the past. That doesn't mean that every piece of business they do is going to be great, but it comes with the optics around it that people are going to think it is. Arsenal have just signed a £75 million centre forward who Brighton let go for £1 million 3 or 4 years ago in Gyökeres. No one seems to refer to that, but And referring to our bad deals, Guedes was an awful deal in retrospect, but it was a good deal at the time, and I don't think anybody questioned it at the time. Fabio Silva, we've only lost 7 or 8 million quid on.
But the thing is, though, we probably I shouldn't have really referenced Fabio in that, because with the
It's all
loan
about the loan
deals,
fees and stuff. Yeah,
yeah, we've probably made a
Very
profit on
close.
Fabio, which is still all very close to breaking even. But I just meant like sort of that outlier of the spending, because I think there's a lot of people in the league. Even okay, Nelson Semedo, we think he was a great signing.
Yeah,
and he was a great footballer for us. But 37 million quid on a right back. If you asked a lot of people in the Premier League, Premier League fans from other clubs, what you think of Semedo, they wouldn't wax lyrical about
I
him.
would
like Wolves
argue,
fans did.
Jord, as much as he was a player that I love and I'd have loved us to keep, if you're looking purely on output, Fabio was a better deal than Semedo on the basis that we've lost 35 million quid on Semedo and we've moved absolutely nowhere in the league off the back of signing him, which was a right wing back. Let's be fair, and he played in a team that was absolute toss for a while. But if you look at it on the deal financially, we've lost a hell of a lot more on Nelson Semedo than we did on Fabio. So that's a deal they won't do again. They're not going to sign a wing back for 35 million
I
quid.
think that's those 3 deals you mentioned there. I still have thoughts that the reason why Fosun aren't as free spending as they were previously was because they've been stung by deals
massively.
like that. Yeah.
Oh, hugely. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah. So, but I do agree with you to a degree as well, though, Joe. In terms of the transfer window, it's hard to say, to Wolves fans. I think on the face of it, I am disappointed with it. I think we could have probably brought 1 or 2 more in. I think Wolves fans, in fact, football fans in general, always like sort of household names that they know are quality or produce big numbers in top 5 leagues. So I think on the face of it, it is a little bit of a disappointing window. But I do agree with the fact that let's look at it October, November time when we're really into the season. Then we've seen what these new signings can produce, because we don't know, Tolu's not 100% fit at the moment. He said in his when he signed for Wolves, he's sort of only got about half an hour in the tank at the moment. So I wouldn't expect him to start the next week or 2. But he starts games and starts knocking a few goals in. Krejci comes in and he's the new Maldini. Like you said, all of a sudden it goes from a 5 out of 10 to a window that's like 8 or 9 out of 10.
And that's the thing, Dave. On the face of the signing of Tolu Rocadare, for me, that's in the top 5 transfers in the league across the window. That is an absolutely incredible level of player to sign. Bear in mind, we already have a first choice number 9, and we've signed him as a backup potentially. That is a signing that we just will not lose money on. He's scored an absolute shit ton of goals wherever he's been. That's what he does, as goes the phrase. So for me that and obviously it went under the radar because it was so late in the window, and it kind of crossed into this why aren't we signing a midfielder kind of sadness that the club that the fans had wrapped around them. Whereas that signing is such a good signing. Similarly for Krejci, I think as well, but obviously I think there's a slight overpay there. But to get a Rocadare, who's a straight out the box Premier League centre forward, which is what he is, he's not going to be bullied by anybody. The physicality just isn't going to be an issue. You saw the goal he scored for Nigeria on Saturday. That's the kind of goal we just don't score. So having to play with those attributes, to me, that's a really, really top level signing. I think Chachua early on was probably a player that fans thought was, is he of the level we need? For me, I think he's shown all the raw physical attributes that he needs to be able to play in that position for us. I think he's got it. I think you can see that, and I think the assist he provided in the West Ham game, you can just tell to me he's going to be a decent player for us. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the negativity and they don't necessarily realise that there's been a lot of good work being done naturally. If you're replacing 2 players like Cunha and Aït-Nouri, who are way above our level, let's be fair, to go and replace them is always going to be difficult. But with Semedo being replaced by Chachua, I think that's a good replacement. I think Muller-Wolf is never going to be able to replace Aït-Nouri, but I think he can bring more in other ways moving forward. I think he'll be a good player for us. I just think obviously that not signing an 8 to go in the middle of midfield is going to be the thing that's going to stiff us, if I'm honest, because that's the big void in the pitch now. But to me, Jeff saying it was a good window, I personally can't disagree with him at this point. That being said, the only way that becomes true or false is by what happens in the next 6 months.
Yeah. we'll look at some of the questions, boys. Now, good discussion. I appreciate that. We've already mentioned Gully's question about the back three. Ethan Diggory, how big an issue do you think AFCON will be come the new year for the squad? Obviously, we've got a good amount of players that are going to be representing African nations, but so do a lot of other Premier League clubs, to be honest. I mean, we've played the likes of Liverpool and so on. Obviously, they'll lose a number of good players in there. Jord, for you, I mean, we do lose a good number of players, but we've still got your Strand Larsens, your João Gomez, your Andre. You still got a bulk of your top players, really.
Yeah, and I think AFCON, like I say, AFCON's an issue for us, but it'll be an issue for every team. Like I say, it always is when it comes around, and I think that's sort of why that tournament almost gets a little bit diminished a little bit by people, because it's almost like affects our league a little bit. But like I say, I don't think we're losing. But I don't think we're losing like our, dare I say, our best players through AFCON as it stands right now, at least.
Yeah.
I think we're losing some very good players, and it'll definitely impact us. But like you say, us losing Chichua is not going to be to the same detriment of Liverpool losing Mo Salah, for example. And I think there's a lot of teams around the league, like say Sunderland. Sunderland had a good window in terms of, well, that too, because they had to spend a lot of money, but they've signed a lot of African players that will be going to AFCON. That Sunderland squad is going to get butchered by AFCON. So I think if you balance it, it'll impact us, but I don't think it's going to be to the detriment of us performing any worse or better. I think everyone just levels out a little bit, to be honest with you.
So, Joe, what are your thoughts on AFCON as well? Obviously, I think it's Agbadu, Rockader, or Rockadara, how we're saying, Chichua, Chirewa, Munetsi. So if there's anybody else I'm missing as well.
I don't see Chirewa being a massive loss, if I'm honest. Obviously, you're forgetting that Matt Doherty's going to play for Ivory Coast as well.
That one will probably go over a few people's heads,
Yeah, it's a private jet.
Yeah.
I don't see it being a massive factor. I think George's point about Sunderland's a good example. I don't think it'll have any massive, huge effect. I think if you look at like teams like Liverpool, if you're missing your key player, it's obviously going to be you're going to be worse off. Whereas I do think, I think there'll be players that we'll miss by then. I think there'll come a time come December where we'll be really not wanting to let Tolu Rokadare go for a month. Would be my prediction.
Yeah.
Agbadu, a good example. But I think we're not going to be particularly underloaded in any individual position, which I think is the key one. I think if you look at Sunderland missing Habib Diarra, they're going to lose. Adingra will go. Obviously, key attacking threats. That's where really if you're a team in the bottom of the league, you need to be scoring goals. At least, if we need to shut up shop for a while, we'll still have a decent back three, relatively speaking, that we can operate with. So it's not a massive concern for me. That being said, we're probably going to lose all the games during AFCON anyway. So if we lose
They're tough
games,
fixtures, to be fair.
We'll probably lose all of them regardless. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting spell, obviously, because I think there's pretty much. I was seeing if we had any players that weren't their nations weren't in it, but I think like literally every nation that you can think of note is in there anyway. So anyone there, will probably be in there.
I think there are some African countries that are on the brink of not getting to the World Cup, but I think AFCON wise they're all pretty much locked up.
Pogodrom. They said, what do you think of fans saying they hope we go down to reset? As someone who's followed the club since the Graham Turner days, the thought of being back in the Championship terrifies me. Also, am I the only person who still thinks we'll be fine this year? I still think we'll be fine. And I've also said very similar things where I don't think going down to the Championship is always, is what it's cracked up to be. I think there's it's a horrible division to get out of, and there's no guarantee. I think when you got teams like Wrexham and Birmingham coming up and spending a bit of money, not to say Wrexham are going up, obviously, all Blues may not go up, but there's teams in the Championship that will spend money and match walls for what they spend as well. So, Jord, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I know it's crap and shit at the moment in the Premier League, but I would hate to go down to the Championship.
I think people that say that, it's just really naive, because as well, being 33 years old, although people would say more so 63. A lot of my life has been watching Wolves in the Championship, or the second division, whatever you want to call it. And it's horrible down there. I watched the Leicester-Birmingham game. It'd been the Friday
it
before
was, yeah.
we played Everton. Just because I thought, you know what, nothing else on. Emma was away. I thought I'll stick it on, and the standard's crap. And like you go down there, your revenues drop, you lose all your best players.
You come back
and
up.
you can quite
You're a
easily
different
get
team anyway. Yeah, you're
Yeah, yeah.
completely different club. Yeah.
You get stuck down there, and there's no guarantee you're coming back up. And honestly, if fans think Foden don't care or give a shit about Wolves right now, which I don't necessarily buy into that narrative, it's just they don't want to put necessarily their own money in. If we go down to the Championship and we're going on a self-sustaining model, there's a good chance we could go down again. If that is the way it's going to go. So honestly, I think people saying it'll be good for us to go down. The only two good things are of us going down would be there's 46 games in the season, so we get more games. So likelihood is you'd probably win more games, but
Yeah.
we know Wolverhampton Wanderers a lot. We'd probably lose more games. So yeah, for me, it's just an absolute. Anyone that says they want to go down, just spend a Friday evening watching a Championship game, and then come back and say you want to watch it because the drop off's massive.
Yeah, I think wanting to win more games, that's fair enough. But I think Joe, for me, no chance.
The only benefit that I can see to it is the queue for the bar might be a little bit smaller. I think it's an absolute disaster at the moment, but there's no positive really to come from it. That we've got used to. I know again, this comes back to the fan base thinking we've never signed any decent players since Ruben Neves and since Joe Moutinho, but you get used to watching semi-decent footballers play for your club, and if obviously the further you fall down the pyramid, the less likely that is to happen. So I think fans become a little bit disillusioned with it on the basis that regardless of the players that we have playing for us, they all tend to move on anyway. But the advantage is, at the moment, they get replaced with players of a roughly equivalent level. That doesn't happen if you go down. You replace them with, if you look at Southampton's team this season as an example. They're a bona fide Championship team. Every single player in their team is at best Championship player. And that's good enough to get you out of the Championship. Generally, it can be with the right manager and 2 or 3 decent players dotted about. But I don't foresee a world where we go down, and then I also don't foresee a world where if we do go down, we come straight back up, because that just doesn't happen in Wolves' world. That's not what we do. If we're gonna have a problem, it has to be an absolutely terminal major one.
Yeah.
So it'll be we finish 15th in the Championship for the next 10 years. So I don't foresee that happening. I see a world where if we are down there in January, we spend a significant amount of panic money and we generally get ourselves out of it at that point, and the clock starts again. So I'm not particularly concerned about that right now, although we've lost 3 games out of 3, so I should be.
Yeah, somebody had asked about January as well. We think we'll spend money, which I do agree we will. A lot of the questions, to be fair, we have covered throughout the show. Danny B, he said, I missed the last 15 minutes of Everton, as I luckily had to go on a stag do. Completely unrelated question. What's your best hangover cure? So that's going back to what let's not go on, Jord.
Well, I let myself down, to be fair. So all I can say is that I got back at 3 a.m. and I don't really remember a taxi home, to be honest with you. I woke up with half a pack of salt and vinegar discos like eaten, and I fell asleep. I was asleep on the sofa. I've got 2 beds. I've got 2 bedrooms upstairs I could have slept in.
All
so
right, mate,
that's not great. I know 2 bedrooms.
All right.
What a show off, eh? No, but so like when I was at uni, where I'd say I was more of a seasoned drinker, I got into a habit of when you got back, I read something that to have a banana, because the potassium levels in a banana would soak up the alcohol, and that did work. But I think the older you get, there's just no cure to it. I feel awful. I don't know if it's the football or being hungover or probably both, but I feel like I've been run over by a double.
Oh, mate, my legs are still killing. I've not had a drop of alcohol, so since I haven't done it for ages. Just down a pint of water with a paracetamol, and in the morning I'll be absolutely sound. I very rarely get hangovers though. Still, might be a bit tired, but I'm normally sound. Joe, you probably drink the most out of us in a non-alcoholic way.
I definitely don't.
Mate, I've seen you on a Saturday during the games or after the games.
Well, sorry for having a social life, Dave. But bear in mind, whenever you see me after the games, he's in the pub, so you are also there.
Yeah, but I'm a wimp when it comes to alcohol.
Best cure for hangover is day drinking. stop drinking as early as you possibly can. So if you get to 8 o'clock and you're still drinking, you're going to have a hangover. If you can get that hangover out of the way on a train home on a Saturday night, that's the key, because you'll wake up much better. Whereas, to be fair, I can't do the 2s, 1 a.m.s, midnights anymore. It gets to about 8 o'clock and I start getting anxious that I need to go to bed. So, yeah, speaking of someone who's even older than Jord, it's unbelievable. Day drinking is the future.
Yeah, I think I might be getting towards that sort of stage now. Whereas I went out to Codsall to have a drink last Saturday after the Everton game, and it got to about 11:30, 12 when the pub was closing, and all my mates were like, "Right, we're going to go uptown now. You come in." And I sat in the car, and I thought, nah, I'm not going. So Lauren came and picked me up. And I said to my mates, I said, "Did you go out?" They said, "Yeah." They didn't get back till 5 a.m. So that would have just completely written me off. So I used to love a Greg's breakfast, because you can order it on Just Eat or something. A Greg's breakfast.
Yeah.
Just love having do like the bacon baguettes or whatever. That used to hit the spot. But I think I'm getting towards your uncle statuses now. We're getting a bit older now, so
Yeah.
But boys, it's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it today. Good debates as always, and obviously even after just over a week since the last game, didn't really speak much about the Newcastle game, but obviously we'll have the previews and stuff coming up. I'm sure we know it's going to be a tricky game, but I'll speak about that this week on the channels. Anyway, Jord, thanks for jumping on again. Where can people find you if they wish?
So yeah, it's at Jord7 on Twitter or Instagram.
Perfect. And Joe, what about you?
At Concept Scouting on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect. I'm at Dave as a party everywhere, and we're at Talking Wolves everywhere as well. If you want to keep up to date with the latest Wolves news, please do drop us a like or follow. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a 5-star review. But until next week, fingers crossed it's a positive result at St James's Park on Saturday, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.